I've always felt like the term second brain to describe the gut was a little cliche. And yes, it has millions of neurons which make up the rather important enteric nervous system. But it doesn't think, reason, or make up imaginary scenarios that would never actually happen to worry about. Do any of those things that we know our first brain to do. That was, of course, until I found out how it really interacts with our brain. Not mimicking it, but instead doing something even more important, preserving it. And this new study may be the best example of that to date. Let's go. Yo, what is up? Welcome back to another week of How to Health. My name is Kevin. I run liftingbalance.com, where we take aim at all things health and longevity and do it in an odd, weird, interesting, and highly sarcastic way. Today, we are back in the smelliest place on Earth to explore how the situation in our bowels is directly associated with the preservation, or lack thereof, of our mind. And I'm not talking about in some ideological, philosophical sense either. We're talking living, functional neurons, responsible for the operation and connection of the brain regions which harbor memory, reasoning, complex thought, and even one's identity itself. Areas that, when dysfunctional, or worse, degenerated, signify the clinical diagnosis of neurodegeneration, such as dementia and Alzheimer's, conditions which have been up and to the right only in prevalence, with expectations of actively impacting over 100 million people in the decades to come. That's 100 million people that literally lose themselves while still being alive. A true modern-day tragedy. And I bring this up because, as I alluded to, there is a new study which just hit the scientific streets, shedding some light on how preventing an outcome of this nature just may happen to be linked to the gut. You heard that right. Everyone's favorite flatulence engine just entered the mind preservation business. Well, correction, has been in the mind preservation business, and we're just figuring it out. However, to be honest, this isn't a totally new concept, as a growing body of evidence, mainly animal models, have established and reiterated this gut health brain function connection. One of my personal favorites being the discovery that metabolites produced in the gut by the trillions of microbes that call it home get absorbed into the bloodstream, traverse the blood-brain barrier, and act on the different cells in our brain to reduce the prevalence of inflammation, thus improving cognition and mental clarity, or as the study concluded, reducing brain fog. Pretty cool, I know. That being said, it's important to understand that this can be a two-way street, and unfortunately, often is, as microbes in the gut can also secrete inflammation-inducing compounds which do the opposite, or even sneak into the bloodstream themselves. One of the most common examples of this is with LPSs, short for lipopolysaccharides, which are bacterial fragments that can sneak through a leaky gut wall and set off a perfect storm of dysfunction via triggering systemic inflammation. And when this is chronic, as we saw in this breakdown here, accelerate disease and biological aging across our various bodily systems. So, it's definitely in our best interest to try to manipulate these gut-derived compounds for vitality rather than the opposite. An interest that this new study only reiterates in a new, eye-opening way, might I add. Let's check it out. A research team out of China sought to build on previous findings which had linked certain microbes and metabolites produced in the gut with having protective effects against the growing neurodegenerative condition of Alzheimer's. And to do this, they analyzed this connection in human patients, cells in culture, and an Alzheimer's mouse model to see if they could reobserve the association and pinpoint the potential mechanism driving the benefits. No easy task. However, an important one. The species of bacteria that previous research led them to hone in on was Akkermansia Municiphilia, a slime-loving bug which dwells and feeds within the mucus layer atop the gut wall. And the reason this bacterium was such an interest was due to the potential effects of one of its metabolic byproducts, a short-chain fatty acid called propionic acid. So to begin, they first took a blood and fecal sample of short-chain fatty acid levels, along with the microbiome composition of healthy individuals and patients with Alzheimer's disease, finding that the Alzheimer's patients had a decreased abundance of both Akkermansia municiphilia and propionic acid. Interesting. From there, to explore the potential mechanisms at play, they administered propionic acid to Alzheimer's mice and cultured hippocampal neuronal cells, observing that the oral propionate supplementation significantly improved cognitive impairment in the Alzheimer's mice. You don't say. But how? Well, when they took a deeper look, they observed that this was accomplished by manipulating the single source of metabolic truth for all of our cells, the mitochondria. Specifically, finding that propionate downregulated fission-stimulating proteins and upregulated pathways which enhance the mitochondria recycling process mitophagy, a process which, as we learned from all of our other deep dives, is absolutely critical for maintaining optimal cellular function. Researchers then took the supplementation experiment a step further, administering Akkermansia municiphilia in probiotic form to both Alzheimer's mice and Alzheimer's bred mice before the actual onset of disease, finding that the treatment improved cognitive function in the mice with Alzheimer's and even helped prevent Alzheimer's-related dysfunction in the pre-Alzheimer's mice, all through the same mitochondria manipulating pathways. Pretty damn interesting if you ask me, and the researchers thought so too. Concluding, quote, taken together, our results demonstrate that Akkermansia municiphilia and its metabolite propionate protect against Alzheimer's-like pathological events in Alzheimer's disease mouse models by targeting mitochondrial homeostasis. Who would have thought? Microbes and mitochondria, two of my favorite things, working together to fight cellular dysfunction and promote vitality. I mean, what a time to be alive. Now, gotta call a quick time out for the obligatory disclaimer that mice are in fact not humans. This study is only another piece of the scientific story, a story which is ever evolving with much more research needed, because we still, to date, have no cure for diseases like Alzheimer's. That being said, if you were to ask, what could I potentially do to increase the prevalence of this bacterial species and the short-chain fatty acids that it produces, I'd probably say the following. First, actually, I'd shamelessly plug that we've covered this topic, highlighting many of the different ways to shore up the communities of microbes in your gut, as well as the epithelial cells which make up your gut wall, quite a few times. And you can see all those powwows on the Microbiome 101 playlist. A great resource if you really want to get into the weeds on things. And across those deep dives, we've seen over and over again that the most impactful interventions seem to lie in the lifestyle that you live. The food you eat, the movement you do, the sleep you get, the stress you trigger, the everyday products you use, the pharmaceuticals you take, and the nature you consume are the most influential factors in modulating and swaying the communities of microbes in your gut towards being health promoting or, well, health detracting. Now, there are cases where dysbiosis has gotten so bad, such as SIBO, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, or extreme depletion due to antibiotics and or severe leaky gut, where a more serious intervention is warranted. But for the most part, your lifestyle and environment are the determining factors. And when it comes to Akkermansia municiphilia and the short-chain fatty acids that it produces, it's important to remember that this species lives in the mucus layer atop the gut wall, a layer which is only kept fruitful and mucus-y when the gut wall is strong, tightly junctioned and sealed. A happening which is heavily dependent on a diet comprised of real whole foods, daily exercise, high quality sleep, and ideally a prolonged 14+ hour overnight fast to provide time for gut rejuvenation. And if you're wondering why real food is such an X factor, let me remind you that what you eat, they eat. And it is the most consistent thing you do that they in the gut interact with. And one of the substances that the beneficial bacteria love to interact with the most is dietary fiber, or the roughage in real food that we humans can't digest, but happens to be our beneficial gut microbes' preferred food. And as a thank you for that febrivious goodness, a byproduct of their fermentation on it is metabolites such as short-chain fatty acids. And that right there is a perfect example of a symbiotic relationship in action. We help them, they help us. We scratch their back, they give us room clearing gas. Win-win. Another reason real food rocks is its often potent phytochemical profile. These are compounds only found in fruits, veggies, beans, legumes, and grains, which have a laundry list of beneficial cellular and metabolic effects, as we discussed here. But the thing about these nutrients that is not well publicized is the fact that they have been linked to stimulating the growth of beneficial bacteria in the gut. One of them being Akkermansia muciniphila. A beautiful thing, I know. All while the ultra-processed, sugar-riddled, energy-dense, nutrient-scarce options do the opposite. But you knew that. Ultimately, bringing us to the revelation, one which you already know, but I'm gonna say again, the best tool you have to promote a balanced, healthy gut is a healthy lifestyle. A lifestyle which will ever so conveniently, independently enhance your metabolic function, think mitochondria, reduce inflammation, enhance cognition, and protect overall brain function. And that's before we add the microbiome effect. I mean, just think about the perfect storm of biological vitality that you can cultivate by making the intentional decision to own your shit. Well, technically the microbes that eat your shit or make it. You know what? I think it's a little bit of both. Either way, it doesn't matter. Just remember that microbe mind manipulation is a thing. And you're either the manipulator or the manipulated. So choose wisely and help your microbes help you.